Thomas, I mean, you've MVP, big speaker, seen a lot of your stuff online, and you're going to talk us through task reassignment. So let's jump to your slide there. Here's a little bit about Thomas. Am I saying that right, Tomasz? Is that better?
Yeah, I mean, you can call me Tomasz, you can call me Thomas. I mean, everything is fine. It's always the last name which really makes people to suffer.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here. I've seen you speak in person many times, and it's, you know, always a delight. So there's quite a lot of info there on the screen. But again, I'll leave that up there just for a minute for people to read. And then I think I'll just hand over and let you talk about your task reassignment, which is a really popular pattern and something that we're seeing a great deal of. So I'm sure this is going to be really useful for everybody. So do you want to share your screen and take over when you're ready?
That's correct. I mean, task reassignment is a hot topic, and it's always been a hot topic for Power Automate. And it's really one of the most underestimated features so far. Like, everything is developing around, everything is being enhanced with new features, with more flexibility, but not reassignment. So I do have some slides, although I do have as well some issues with the PowerPoint. I don't know why, but let's see if it works. So thank you, Sharon, for this introduction. One more time, my name is Tomasz Poszytek. I know the last name is really difficult to pronounce. It's really Polish. There is a lot of ash. Nevertheless, I am Business Applications MVP. I do work with Power Platform ever since it emerged, ever since it appeared in in online, in Office 365. I used to be working a lot with Nintex, with index workflows, with index forms, and then once Power Automate Flow back then appeared, it was just a very easy transition for me. So, like as I said, ever since it really appeared in online, I just somehow got on board and work with that. Honestly, I haven't been touching the on-premises world for like 4 years already, something like that. If you'd like to connect with me, there is this QR code, or go to aka.ms/Poszytek, and then there you will find all those hyperlinks to all the social media channels that you can connect. And that's it. If you're willing to know anything else about me, about my career so far, don't hesitate and simply ask over those social media channels. And then, because I don't have a lot of time, I will now just move to the contents. So to the tasks. And that's the question if it works. All right, it works. So now let's start with the very basics. How the Dataverse model for tasks for approvals actually looks like. The point is that although approvals and everything around tasks is actually stored in Dataverse, you don't have to actually need any additional premium license to work with Power Automate tasks. And I know that you all know that, but I just wanted to point it out. However, if you do have a premium license, so if you can access Dataverse, if you can query tables, then you can actually as well access a new level of working with tasks. So basically, let's go through those tables which do store and work with tasks. So first, and the most important one, is the table that is called the approval. This is a table that actually holds information, like a header information about a task. Whether it's a single task, or is it one task assigned to multiple people, employees, whoever, whether it's waiting for the first response or for all responses, it doesn't matter. Here in this table, in this table, Power Automate stores like a title of a task, its ID, and information, well, when it was created and who is the owner, so who initiated the approval process. Then we have the approval request. This table actually holds information about every single task generated in the approval process. So if this is an approval waiting for the first, if this is an approval assigned to a single user, there will be just one entry. If the approval is assigned to multiple employees, then in approval requests, you will find a lot of entries, one per each person. And in that table, you will have information about the current status of the approval, whether it's still active or inactive about this specific task, to whom it is assigned, and when it was assigned. And now, once an assignee completes their task, then there is a new entry created in approval response And here is stored information about the outcomes of the approval. So what was the outcome? Was it approved, rejected, or maybe it has some custom outcomes? So what was that custom outcome that user clicked? What was the comment? When it was completed? Well, and by whom it is not really, I mean, there is also information by whom it was completed, but it is not so much important because there are some principles that I will be talking about later. Therefore, a specific task should obviously be completed only by the person to whom it was assigned. Then we have as well the table with the users. So every user in Dataverse is present in that table. And the flow approval is just like even over the header information, it stores or keeps just general information about every approval. So like just the approval ID and some basic information. It's really simple and somehow follows the approval pattern. Basically, these three tables, so the approval request, and approval response, are the most important ones when speaking about reassignment. And yeah, and that's the very important information as well, so that the tasks are being created and stored and maintained per environment. So there is no like a hub for all the tasks that you have, I mean, no out-of-box hub for all tasks that you have been assigned through every environment in Dataverse, in Power Platform, that you have an access to. When you navigate to action items in Power Automate portal, you will see only those tasks which were assigned to you in that specific environment. All right, so let's now move on to, well, those questions. So how can we assign tasks in Power Automate? There are like 3 out-of-box and supported ways. So we can do that via Power Automate flows. Sorry, how can we assign, not reassign. So we can assign a task via Power Automate flows. Obviously, we can use an action to create a task and then wait for the response, or even create and wait. We can use Microsoft Teams chat. And basically inside Microsoft Teams, we can as well create tasks, although those will be, again, created per Microsoft Teams environment. And we can do that directly in Microsoft Teams new approvals. So there is like an application, Microsoft Teams, that allows us to create a very sophisticated templates for approvals that can be used inside chats. It is somehow following those features, those functionalities that some of you may know from Kaizala. So in Kaizala, we also used to have like custom actions, and those custom tasks in Microsoft Teams is somehow following this idea. And then, well, how can we, come on, move. And then how can we reassign a task? Well, there is just one supported way. The person who is assigned a task has to log into Power Automate, go to a task, and then on the task form needs to select the outcome as a reassign, and then type an email of a person to whom they want to reassign that task. And when I mentioned in the beginning that this is one of the most, let's say, underevaluated feature, this is why, because even though this information is stored in Dataverse, so it should be quite easy to create additional functionalities that would help admins or makers to create actions in Power Automate to reassign a task on specific cases, scenarios. There is no such features yet, So what basically happens when we decide to reassign a task, or when a user decides to reassign a task? First of all, the original entry is being updated. Its status reason is being set to reassigned, so from active to reassigned, and status as well from active is set to inactive. So this original entry inside approval requests is being updated. So that's the entry in approval requests. And then a new entry in approval request is being created that has a lookup to the previous one, so to that one that has been set to inactive, and as well has its GUID, I mean its index, its ID in the reassigned from index field. So those two fields are being updated. So actually the original task is being, let's say, deactivated, and the new task is created with the new assignee. Right, but then what can we do actually if there is, if the assignee, the original assignee who is currently assigned a task is not available because they are on holidays or they are absent or they are on sick leave for whatever 100 other reasons that person is not available. Then we need to remember that there are some principles around the tasks reassignment. So first, when we think like, what can we do? Like, how can we reassign a task? There is a mechanism that actually controls, that controls this reassignment. So it's not really so flexible. It does have some strong guidance or guidelines to follow. So first, users cannot reassign tasks to themselves. So if you're assigned a task and you'd like to reassign it to someone else, you cannot assign it again to you. Secondly, sorry, that was the second principle. The first one was that users cannot reassign tasks which are not assigned to them. So if there is a task that you don't see on your list of assigned tasks, then obviously you're not able to reassign it. Lastly, users cannot reassign a task back to the creator, to the author, so to the user who actually initiated the approval. Fernando, sorry, just saw the question from Fernando around these relationships. So just to explain how it works, the relationships, it will be very fast. It is always one-to-many. So like one approval requests there are many approval requests looking to approval. So here is many, there is one. Again, here is many and there is one. So one approval to many approval responses, one approval to many approval requests. So like where there is an arrow, there is actually the one quantity. So it can be like 1 to 1 or more, or even 0 or more. No, it has to be always 1 or more. Okay, that way. Hope it helps. All right, so those are the 3 major principles when speaking about reassignment, and when doing the reassignment, following the possibilities we have inside the box. So using reassignment in Power Automate task form, or when using, there is also an API that Daniel Laskevitz has shared, then unfortunately all these ways, even though they are somehow promising, they are following those principles, and thus they are impossible to be really used in productive scenarios. All right, so how can we reassign those tasks using like the very official ways if the person who is assigned is not available? Or maybe what we should consider when designing the workflows as well. So basically, one of the good patterns that we can use when designing the approvals is to use timeouts. So when we do design an approval action, we should go into settings, and there we can define how long this action should wait for the response. Well, basically, you need to be aware of that, that after 30 days, the action will automatically be terminated or be canceled because it will be simply timed out. And with that, the whole workflow is going to be timed out as well. So it will simply fail. And therefore, if you want to use timeouts, you need to set a date or number of days shorter than 30 days. So that, for example, after 25 days, workflow times out, and then you define the logic. So for example, if after 25 days, the task is not still completed, the workflow re-triggers itself, for example, and waits for the task again. Or that we can create like a control, the parent and the child flows, or the controller and how it's called, the auto flow, that model, whatever, the parent and the child. And then parent simply triggers child who is assigning a task. And then in a child flow, there is this timeout set. And then once the timeout is exceeded, it, for example, returns information back to parent. and then parent checks, okay, was it completed or not? If not completed, then triggers child flow again. So that's one of those approaches we can use to simply have long-running flows, or to have flows that are waiting for timeout, and then if there is no timeout, they escalate it to someone else or trying to reassign a task again. Another approach is obviously to ask the owner of the approval task to cancel the task. So always when the author of the task, so the initiator of the approval task, goes to the action items in Power Automate portal, they can see what tasks they have assigned. And from there, they can actually cancel them. Another way is to think about those smart workflow designs. So one of those smart workflow designs that I already said was to use timeouts. The other one would be to use, for example, single approvals, not multiple approvals. So wait for the first approval, not for all the approvals. And basically to try to define these logic in your workflows, that even if there is no assignee present, if the task is cannot be completed, you can still continue the workflow, for example, by using timeouts and escalation together, or by using timeouts and like linear, come on, cannot spell it, linear, so like in a horizontal way to assign a task to a colleague or someone who or someone who replaces that person while they're away on holidays, and so on. Another way would be, as mentioned, to wait only first response, not all responses. So if you have a task which actually does require a lot of responses, maybe it's better to, for example, create multiple tasks, and in every task put 2 or 3 assignees, counting that they will be on site and available for the responses, rather than assigning a single task to like 10 assignees and waiting for all these 10 responses, because it's always harder to get everyone to respond. And well, lastly, which is maybe not the very good way or a good idea, but it's also feasible, you can always ask global admin or password admin in Office 365 to reset users' password and then sign on their behalf to their account and simply complete the task or terminate it. However, if all these methods fail, there are also some additional ways. So I mentioned that there is this custom connector that we can use for Power Automate. It was shared by Daniel Laskewicz. It adds some custom actions to Power Automate, for example, to reassign a task, to approve a task, to cancel a task. However, well, first it requires premium license because it is a custom API for which we do need a license. And secondly, it still follows the principles. So, for example, you are not able to reassign a task using connection that is different to a user who is currently assigned a task. So if you create a workflow that contains or that owns an action for tasks reassignment, and that workflow was designed by, I don't know, John, but currently the task is assigned to Jim, and then Jim is trying to reassign, to trigger that workflow that reassigns a task, they will be prompted with an error because Jim is not the one who, John, so the owner of the connection, is not the one who is assigned, and API is not going to allow that. I will show you how it works. All those issues with that custom connector. So I'll park it in here. And also there are some ways that we can follow using simply Dataverse. So we can directly work on the Dataverse tables. We can open them to edit in Microsoft Excel. So load all the data from approval requests into Microsoft Excel and then update the records. Or we can as well create flows or power-ups which will be following those 2 actions that are always happening if the task is reassigned. And yep, having that said, I will simply go to demos, and that hopefully will help us to understand better. So, but first things first. Speaking about those approvals and where you can find them in Power Automate, if for some reason you still don't know, everyone who has an access to Power Automate and then they access approvals, here they will find all the tasks which are assigned to them in the specific environment, right? So here under the received, I will see all the tasks which are currently assigned to me. Now under the send tab, I will find all the tasks which were actually created by my account. So if there is a workflow that is using my account as a connection to authorize Power Automate approvals, then I will see these tasks here. And as well, I am able to cancel these tasks right from here. All right, so let's do a simple test. I have here this Stefan Kowalski. I will simply now generate him a task. So that's a simple, very simple workflow that is used to generate tasks. Or maybe no, I will assign it to John because you'll see why. All right, so now this workflow is running. I will now switch to John's account. So here is John's account. And now that workflow which is assigning a task, it does a couple of things apart from only generating a task, so that it is like covering the whole spectrum of all the ways that a task can be assigned and completed. So first, it is creating this approval so that John, if he navigates to his tasks, to his action items, he is now going to be able, oh gosh, there were too many words. Now he is able to find this newly assigned task, right? This test Cambridge. But apart from just assigning this task, this workflow is as well sending this actionable message. So I will show you in a moment. And as well is posting this adaptive card to Microsoft Teams private conversation with John, and then it's waiting for approval. So now John actually is able to complete this task right from here, or from Power Automate, or from Microsoft Teams. And as well from here, John is able to reassign this task, right? So that's the most supported way to reassign a task. However, as said, John as well received this actionable message, which is my custom mail. Don't focus on the requester. It's just a fixed person and fixed picture. I wasn't so creative to make it dynamic. The point is that this is a custom mail that allows John to either approve, reject, or reassign this task. And now here, because it's custom, the list of people who are possible to be chosen is closed. So let's try the first test. I would like to reassign this task to me, so to the initiator. And now this will not work because, as said, I'm not able to reassign a task to the initiator, or at least I shouldn't be able. And right, so there is an error occurred. That's not feasible. There is no fancy response. However, the error is because the person who I was trying to assign a task is the initiator. Now, if I try to assign to myself, then again, I should receive an error. Right, so there is also a message that the user to which the request is being reassigned already has a pending request for this approval, which means I cannot reassign task to myself. However, there is also a third option, Stefan. So I can reassign this task to Stefan, and this will work because, and now I will show you why, because it works. Basically, every time John was pressing the button to reassign, this card was calling that flow that is handling the approval response. And this flow actually contains actions from that custom connector. So let me just show you this custom connector here. It is hosted on Daniel Laskewitz's GitHub if you'd like to experiment it with it yourself. It's called the Flow Approvals Extended, and it has like 3 actions or 4 actions. or even 5. So it can allow you to like complete the task with approval response, cancel, get list of approvals, get list approval requests, and reassign a task. So those are the endpoints that this custom connector contains and actions that we can use in Power Automate. And so back to the Power Automate. When the task was reassigned, the workflow simply tried to call that custom connectors action. And this connector or this action now here is authenticated using John Researcher's account. That means every request to that endpoint is done on behalf of John Requester, like if this was a John Researcher who is doing the request. This is why if now Stefan would like to make the same operation again, so like if Stefan would like to reassign a task to John, he wouldn't be able to do that because this action works on behalf of John, so that it would mean that a task is now assigned to Stefan, but the person who is trying to reassign it is John, and therefore endpoint is going to return an error. Let me show you that. I will now switch to Stefan. So this is Stefan's account. Here are Stefan's tasks, right? This is Stefan Kowalski. There is this task test Cambridge. And as well, Stefan received another email with another request for a task. And then if Stefan would like to reassign this task, for example, back to John Researcher, the endpoint is going to return an error that this specific user, so John, has no permissions to reassign Stefan's tasks. And this is a bummer because there is actually, I mean, it's like this close to really have a working, productive endpoints and actions to be used in a lot of workflows that can be used to really handle those specific scenarios. However, Microsoft is still not there with their work on making these approvals and, well, generally speaking, working with tasks outside of the assignee context ready. I heard rumors that this is somewhere on the roadmap, that this will be delivered somewhere maybe this year, maybe next year, although this is still something that, well, I guess many of us is waiting very, very badly, and it's still not there. So instead of doing this kind of reassignment, so like simply using those endpoints because it's really not flexible, what I can propose is to, well, for example, use Power Automate desktop actions. Bad, Dataverse actions. For example, in here, what I as well have is that if I disable now the reassign and approval action and enable these two actions, I will again have the same outcome. So first I will create this new row. So to create this new, maybe I'm just going to edit. I'll create a new record in approval request table that is going to have this lookup to the existing approval request item and its approval ID. And so that's it, right? It contains all the information around the approval of an existing record. And then I will update the existing record, marking it as reassigned and inactive in a status. So those are those two parameters that have to be updated to make this reassignment properly working. To show you how it works, I as well created an application, Power Apps. It's again a very simple application that I'm using to work with tasks. And it as well allows me to reassign the tasks to other users. And well, basically, because it is working directly on Dataverse, not using any endpoints, it doesn't follow any principles. So with this, I can actually reassign the task to myself. I can reassign a task to the same person who was assigned a task in the first place, and so on and so on. Now, Fernando, all fine. I mean, it's quite late, but I don't need a cup of coffee. For example, I have this test Cambridge, right? And now Stefan is out, Stefan is on holidays, and I would like to reassign on his behalf that task to someone who is present at the office. So I will choose, maybe not myself, but I will choose again, John Researcher. He's somewhere here. Here is John. And change the assignee of that test Cambridge. So application tells me that this has been completed successfully. This should now refresh so that the assignee is as well refreshed and changed. Or if not, I will refresh it manually. Yeah, now that's the bummer. That should work. At least it was working fine in just moments ago. Let me check if Stefan has this task assigned back to him. Sorry, not Stefan, but John. Okay, but I mean, the data has not been refreshed, although the task was reassigned. So again, that task that just moments ago was on Stefan, now is back on John. And that application that I was showing you is actually following the same two activities as I showed you in Power Automate. So first, it is creating a new entry in approval request table with a relationship with a lookup to the existing entry, and then it's marking that existing entry as inactive. Why it is not refreshing, I don't know. Oh, okay, now it refreshed. So that is that simple. Plus, as well, you can cancel a task and delete a task. Around cancellation, it's the whole new discussion, as that feature is really not working outside of the Power Automate task form. Really. So in the end, what I want to say is that the reassignment of tasks is feasible. The most supported way, obviously, is the one using the user API or the user interface. So the form, either on Microsoft Teams or in Power Automate. If the currently assigned person is not available, then what you have to do is to simply try to design the workflow that assumes such a situation can occur and, for example, times out those tasks and reassigns them or assigns them to a different person. In the end, if you're unable to change the workflow, the design of the workflow, and the currently assigned person is not present, what you can always do is to simply navigate to Dataverse and then update these records manually inside Dataverse tables, which is the most difficult way. And of course, it requires you to have the premium licenses, although that is the last chance for you to push the workflow forward. And in the end, I really hope that Microsoft is going to start working on this piece of features, of this piece of functionality really hard, because for most of the business workflows that I'm working with, such functionalities that would allow me to reassign a task automatically or to cancel a task automatically is a must-have. And so far, there is nothing that I can use instead of, apart from directly querying Dataverse. And I'm personally as well really looking forward to have such a functionalities. All right, so that was a very fast and rough ride. I hope that even though it was quite fast, I was able to explain what I wanted to.
I think that was really good. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like I say, it gets a lot of traction, and an awful lot of people ask me about it every time. You know, how are you handling that? And I think there are different patterns for different businesses. Like you say, depending on your appetite for using the tools as is, the 30-day timeout and the whole premium license. So interested to see. That's the first time I've seen Daniel's extension, actually. So that was really good as a demo too. Is that something that you've deployed a lot of times for clients, or?
No, I mean, as said, if this was working for any account, then I would be deploying that extension, this custom connector a lot of times. But because it is following that principle that it only allows to reassign a task to the I mean, by the person who is assigned and who is the owner of the connection. Therefore, it's actually just a cool thing to show on the demos that there is almost a way to do that automatically, although it cannot be used for productive scenarios, since you cannot create like a dynamic connection every time you're trying to use it.
So do you find, I mean, what we end up doing is pseudo approvals. So an email approval outside of approvals, right? Or with a...
What I'm doing actually is using the timeouts. That's the first thing that I'm always using, so that if there is a timeout, if a task is not completed before the 25 days usually, I'm simply trying to reassign the task to another person or to escalate to the line manager. So that's the first thing. And then if I do need to have this logic where I need to be able to reassign a task, then I unfortunately have to query Dataverse. That's the only way today. And then, well, with the reassignment, it's, let's say, quite easy. When you reassign a task, it's assigned to a different person can complete it, and the workflow will proceed. But the whole new story and the whole new set of problems is with cancellation, because even if you do everything fine, like even if you follow all those activities that actually happens when you cancel a task from user UI, from the user interface, directly in Dataverse, then unfortunately workflows are not resumed. They are still pending. And it seems that there is some additional logic on the business layer when user clicks to cancel the task.
Tidy up is something that's missing, right?
Yep, there is something missing. So basically, it's a job for Microsoft to create really like admin actions to handle approvals directly from Cloud Close.
So Thomas, how would you want Microsoft to solve this for us? Should they improve on the system that we've got, or should they give us, would it be better if we should lose the 30 days, right? And allow greater flexibility on the reassignment. Do we fix what we've got, or do we look to move to a secondary system that maybe is more of a state machine? What would your ask be of Microsoft?
State machine is easier to implement. No, actually, really, I would like to have a set of actions under the Power Automate admin actions that would allow me to get at least, to follow even those actions that you saw in the Alaskavitz connector. So to get a list of pending requests, to cancel pending requests, to reassign a pending request, to complete a pending request, and so on.
Yeah. So more of
on behalf of anyone, so not really on behalf of the currently assigned person. So that would be the flexibility I'm looking for. Maybe together with a separate security role, so that only users having that security role would be able to do that. But in the end, it's just a matter of implementation. And today we have nothing.
We're always encouraged to put in kind of the AD structure. So maybe even your manager could reassign your tasks, right?
That would be fine as well, but it's not feasible today.
No, absolutely not. I think we need to come up with a hit list of things that we'd like Microsoft to do, and maybe post that in. Get some of the product team on a call, right? Quick question from Andrew: where can we get the extension from? Do you have the link for Danny's GitHub that we can pop in there afterwards, Thomas?
I think I have it here. I hope I have it in comments. If not, no, I don't have it.
Okay, we'll get that put in the.
But I will find it after I end my presentation, so that
Awesome.
I'll paste it in the chat window.
And also, obviously, your connection details as well. There you go, so that people can follow you and subscribe. Like I said right at the start, I've watched several of your videos, and I find that you very nicely and succinctly solve an individual problem, or talk about one really focused thing in context in your videos. So I would totally recommend Thomas's YouTube channel. Do go and subscribe. Is there any more questions? Final call before I let Thomas go and have a coffee or something stronger. Really depends what time it is there with you.
Supper.
Okay. All right, nothing popping through. Thank you so much for your time of coming along and speaking to us. It's always great to have an MVP on a call and to lend us your experience from everything that you're doing and from your insight of the whole tool set as a business applications MVP. So thank you so much for joining us in Cambridge and at supper time. And I'll let you go. Oh, lots of thanks.
Thank you for having me.
We also have some information about how to be a sponsor, so please do sponsor our channel. And we use the Patreon, I'll get that right. We use the Patreon mechanism for sponsorship, and there's various different ways that you can go along and put some finances into the channel if that's what you're into, just to fund prizes and events that we can do on these individual sessions. We haven't got a prize or a competition this time, but we are sponsored this time by Casper 365, which is my company, who you know, have given us the time and the marketing for the event so far this time. So really great. If there are any sponsors out there, if you know any organisations that would like to sponsor by giving us some prizes or some cash giveaways, Amazon vouchers, which we've done, or some gifts for the speakers, anything nice like that. It's unfortunate that we don't have any swag we can give away. That used to be really great when we were in person. And if you do want to find out more about the user group, we have the new community page on the Microsoft Tech Communities site. And this has come along leaps and bounds since we were on previous platforms. So Microsoft is now fully supporting the tech communities with the Power Platform user group pages. Please do go along and register to be a member, and then you'll get updates every time we're having an event, and we'll send emails out to you to let you know who the speakers are going to be and what kind of event is coming up. If you've got anybody in your organisation that would like to come and speak, please do get them to volunteer. We put a call for speakers out before every event, and we would love to have a variety of speakers.